Yes. Welcome and come well into another episode, another doorway, another portal, another vortex entitled Am I as I am, as you are? Today's topic, we're going to be touching upon what are the principles of assumption and accusation. So what is assumption and accusation? What are the principles of assumption and accusation? What's the principle of assuming something, and what's the principle of accusing someone? And of course, you already know how this channel goes. If you're new to this channel, don't know if you are, but if you are, I'll touch upon different principles that interplay between two individuals in a union of a relationship or marriage, companionship, partnership, or just a uniting of two beings who have a connection, both mentally and emotionally, and the static that appears, the friction that happens between these two people. And instead of understanding each other or trying to understand each other and take things personal from each other, understand the principle of what you are. When you understand the principle of what you are and the principles that are displaying itself, you tend to become lighter, and you don't take the person and their personality so personal, because that throws your focus off of yourself. So today we're going to touch upon what is the principles, or what are the principles of assumption and accusation. So of course, if you are familiar with this channel, we dive right into it. I take it line for line and or doorway for doorway, and together we walk down this hallway. Okay? So the first line and or doorway is first you assume something, then you accuse someone. Assumption naturally and automatically seeks to mature itself into an accusation, or assumption naturally and automatically seeks to mature into accusation. The unspoken is seeking to speak, and it gathers any and every possible evidence and assistance to keep its forward force going straight and toward until the mental and emotional qualities and volume of an organism is satisfied. So when people get into certain kind of friction with each other or chaos with each other, and somebody assumes that something is happening or that something took place, as soon as that begins to happen, that assumption is seeking an accusation. So you go from assuming something to accusing someone. So that's why I said here, it's the unspoken seeking to speak, because to assume something is not really speaking it out just yet. You're thinking, you got wheels turning, this may be, but it also may not be. So whatever you think may be right may also be wrong. Whatever you think may be may not be. And just the very awareness of that, just the very recognition of that truth and fact, should keep you balanced to some degree and light as possible, until that is a proven fact. But if it's not a proven fact, some kind of common sense within you should balance itself out, thus balancing you out. Thus you being centered and balanced within yourself ultimately is the ultimate goal. So the unspoken is seeking to speak, and it gathers any and every possible evidence and assistance to keep its forward force going straight and toward. What this means is basically you're thinking about all the times you were right, all the times you were right in a conversation, a social conversation, on a math test, on a quiz, all the times that you were right. Even when you proved your point across or had a debate or an argument with somebody, and they said, you know what, you right. You know what, I'm wrong, you right. You got that. You correct, I'm incorrect. I'll give it to you. You own that. You good. These things, and if you take it, that rightness that they gave you that said you were correct or you were right in the past or so, and you let it go to your ego, or you let it go to your false self, uh, that begins to imbue the false self. It begins to glow and radiate the false self. And if that radiates, that can overpower and override the real self, which is what you truly are, which is your spirit, or which is your anonymity. What I call anonymity, because you are anonymous, an anonymous thing, an anonymous phenomenon, anonymous being. It kind of overrides that. And you don't even want your anonymity to override your identity, or your identity to override your anonymity. You want a nice balance. And you should be able to detect when the identity or the ego or the profile or the image is starting to rise higher than the anonymous thing or the anonymity that you are. So this is why some people get real egotistical and come back and say, I'm sorry, pardon me for that, I apologize for that. Because their balance came back, or their balance is there so much at a high degree that the ego is starving, the false self is starving, so it seeks for something to validate its existence, and this becomes higher, this becomes higher. It's like a seesaw. So it's understanding between these two things, what's going on. And the only thing that can determine what's really going on is your keen sense or your keen awareness. How keen is your awareness? How sharp is it? How aware are you when these things happen or when these actions occur? What's going on within? Are you able to witness your thoughts instead of acting as them and being the thought? Because every thought seeks to become action. This is principle. And especially in someone assuming something and accusing someone of something, it's thought thriving and seeking and determined to become an action. But it doesn't necessarily mean that what you're assuming and accusing is actually right and exact. It's just a forward force forwarding itself because it's only pointed in one direction, straight towards. So it's determined by any means necessary to justify itself. And this is just a principle, which is once, I said it's not really directly pointed towards a person. It's a principle just moving forward and gathering everything that it can while it's moving forward. It's gathering, I was right then. I was right 10 years ago when I had a conversation, debate with this person. Oh, I knew he was cheating on me because I seen him with the girl, and I seen it, and they were kissing, and I caught them outside, and I was right. I knew I was right, and I told my aunt that I was right before when we were talking about the story before, and she asked me, what's the name of that character? It was that character in that movie. It was that character in that movie, and she knew. She said, "Oh, you know what? You're right." Okay, and I was right then, and I was right then. So it starts to gather all this rightness to make itself right, to keep that forward force moving. And this is principle. Direct your focus or redirect your focus on principle rather than the personal aspect, because the person, like I said once again, does not exist on the outside. They're just an energy form which took on a physical form, something within you that you have to learn within yourself. Their ignorance may be your teaching. They are your teacher. You find that teacher within yourself because you are your own student and teacher and student. There's an old ancient saying I mentioned before in other videos: when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. This is all you. When you are ready, you will appear. And that's all that's saying. Until you're ready, you will never appear. Okay? So that's what that means. And I said it gathers any and every possible evidence and assistance to keep its forward force going straight and toward until the mental and emotional qualities and mental and emotional volume of an organism is satisfied or content. Whether that mental and emotional thing is some kind of schism or psychotic breakdown of the mind, and emotion can be her or him crying, shaking, I can't believe, you did this to me, and I seen you with her, or I seen you with him, and you messing me up, and um, that is a form of uh egoistic satisfaction. And egoistic satisfaction is just an energy which is an extreme, which seeks to break you down in some way, in some physical way, seeks to break you down mentally or emotionally, or both, and in more than some cases within imbalanced individuals. Okay. Okay. um. So in other words, it's before we move on to the next line of doorway, it's sort of like the moving dot creating a line in hopes of creating a full circle. The dot, but the moving dot creating a line in hopes of creating a full circle. Um, Making a full circle as well back to itself. So it's the beginning of a thought or an assumption, searching for its ending, which is the accusation, which is what I said before, from that being unspoken to it being spoken and in action. So it's the beginning searching for its ending, or the one protruding from itself in order to return back to itself. So it's trying to make a full circle. This forward force, it's neither negative or positive, bad or good, right or wrong, it's just a force. It's a forward force, um, seeking to return back to that point which it became forward from. And it uses the principles of what we know as assumption and accusation, which is more of the human brain. If that's more deeply rooted within the human brain rather than the mind of an individual. Okay. Um. Okay. So anyway, move along or move within. The next line in our doorway is to assume is a mental thing. To accuse is a verbal thing, an action thing. From silence to sound, from feeling to emoting, from thought to action, from brewing to stewing. From brewing is just a liquid without contents. To stewing, a stew is a liquid with contents within it, which the contents can be an example of thoughts. Okay, so it's a stew, which is the mind, and then the brewing is the thoughts within the mind. Okay, so it's some kind of understanding to it. So to assume is a mental thing, to accuse is a verbal thing. And from that crossover from assumption to accusation, it can also be understood in examples as from silence to sound, from silence or from silence to sound, from feeling to emoting, like a glowing or radiating to emoting, from thought into action, fighting, confrontations, arguments, um, from warming into boiling. Like this, my blood is boiling. I'm getting pissed off. I'm getting angry. I'm getting furious. How the fuck could she do this? How could he do this to me? It's not really he or she that is doing something to you. It's not a fact. It's not a truth, so to say. It's just a principle just moving. Are you aware of this moving force as it's trying to mature and grow into something, rather than you falling victim to each and every thought that pops in your head, and it makes a 3D effect to basically make you animate in a certain way. Okay. um from potential ally to possible enemy, which is someone that you may be connected to closely. All of a sudden they were your ally, or they were on the side or had your back. Now they're a possible enemy. You see, so and this is how the left brain and right brain hemisphere naturally operate. But don't get lost in these words, titles, and labels of an individual so quickly. Just know that it is a principle, being its principle, period. You know, from energy to entity. So you're assuming it's an energy, it's present. And then when you accuse, you act out the thought, then that energy form becomes an entity. That entity becomes you. See, and you get taken over and possessed by this entity, which was nothing but an energy that took on a form, that form being you. Now you represent that. You the entity that represents that energy. It's taking over your body, it's taking over your mind, housing itself within your brain and your bloodstream. See, it's sort of like and your awareness determines the volume and the volume of its power and the degree of its usage and the duration or the length of its stay within you. How long are you going to keep creating a covenant or a home or a shelter for this energy form? How long will you be the entity to represent this possible false energy that you're in the present moment or that you're in the present sphere of within that moment? Okay. That's what that means basically. From intangible to tangible, once again, from a thought into an action. It's something which is intangible. You can't touch a thought, so a thought is in a body that can be touched. So it's seeking to touch or to feel. So thought into action, from intangible into something which is tangible. Okay, it's seeking. It's a forward force, and this forward force is not really even called assumption and accusation. We're just calling it according to our dictionary and our words and our knowledge in this brain. But it's not a word at all. It's just a principle and a forward force seeking to from being invisible to being visible, from being invisible to being visible, from being unseen to being seen. It's just a force. It's not you and him or you and her and he did this and she did that and she's up to that and he's up to that. If you just remain silent for a minute and still and just witness your thoughts for a minute. Don't become one with your thought or with your thoughts or with your accusations or your assumptions. Just witness it. How many times has this routine and this mind cycled over the past 10 to 20 years with different people, from family members to associates to relationships and things of that nature? How many times has the same voice had that same quote with that same statement with different individuals throughout your experience? And once you realize it's the same voice, the same quotes, the same statements, the same mental dialogue that's happening in your mind with different individuals, you step back and you say, wait, hold on. Are you real? And this is what you not necessarily ask your thoughts, but just witness them. And in the silence of within the intelligence of your silence and the intelligence of your awareness, it itself will balance itself out and will reveal that truth to you automatically and immediately. And you'll get it, and then you will think twice before acting or speaking upon something with someone, okay? With your significant other, or your mate, whatever you want to call it. So it's from first dimension to third dimension, from sprouting to stemming to growing. This is all principle. This is all this forward force or this pointing force that is pointing itself forward. from the impossible to become the possible or the possibility. Okay, so it's first dimension. The reason why I said from first dimension to third dimension, because they call this body or this embodiment or this vehicle or the skin envelope, they call this third dimension or third, or like I said, third density, which we learned in metaphysics. Your mind is one dimensional, means it's a flat plane. It's just, you can close your eyes right now and imagine anything you want to imagine, or visualize whatever you feel like you want to visualize. And you can see people play in your mind. You can see people moving. You can even hear sound. You can even taste things. As you're doing this, you're crossing that over from first dimension into third dimension. You're crossing it over from first dimension into third dimension, or from first dimension into third dimension. So it's looking for that crossover from first dimension into third dimension, in other words. And it's seeking that third dimension crossover because it wants to be life as well, just like you are life. It wants to have everything that you have. It wants to be everything that you are. And in order for itself to be that, it has to make that crossover, which means it's hoping that you get lost in the thoughts and the emotional field that is radiating from a place where there is no body, emotional field, and radiation. From a space where there is no body, field, and emotional radiation, into a place which is your body and this physical dimension, which is the epitome of a body, emotional field, and radiation. To radiate. Okay? Or to irradiate. Ra is nothing but light, of course. So to become a shining light, to shine some kind of light, whether it's negative, whether it's positive, some form of light in some way to validate its existence, to confirm its own life or its own existence within your physical experience, so that it can remain there and house itself within you for as long as possible. And it's an energy which is nothing but an extreme, which means it can run you out, it can dry you out, it can, destroy you. But in actuality, the real truth is you are self-destructive and you're destroying yourself if you keep this in place and space within you. Okay? And I'm going to say from sprouting to stemming to growing. It's something which is a sprouting, and then it stems and it begins to grow or flower, prosper. Once again, it's just a forward force trying to prosper, to cross over from one dimension to the other. But it can't cross over from one dimension to the other, from first dimension to third dimension, if you do not give it that permission and access into the third dimension. And what determines that? The sharpness and keenness and volume and degree of your awareness. It always boils down to self-awareness. Always, in all ways. Okay. The next line and or doorway is, once the spark of possible life is lit, the possible life being the sprouting of an assuming thought, the creating doesn't stop until the creation has appeared, even if the creation which has appeared was never there to even begin with. This is the reason why assuming doesn't stop until it accuses, or doesn't want to stop until it accuses. The spark of life, once again, the possible life, you gave life to a thought popped up, you direct your attention to the thought, now the thought has life, or possible life, because you directed your attention to that thought, instead of letting that thought pass, or just suspending that thought and going about your business. You actually let that thought insert into you, and then you started to act that thought into action. So now, in other words of understanding, that thought now becomes your God, which you worship. Unbeknownst to you, you're worshiping that now because you're acting it out. It's looking for an actor. It's seeking to be an action. to begin acting. And they can only do that within the physical vehicle, which has, limbs and can animate certain things, which is you. See, so it's all seeking to become you and to override you so that it can empower itself and keep itself empowered or keep itself valid to some degree. And as it elongates itself, your life begins to shorten. Keep that in mind as well, because your health will start to go down in different ways of understanding. Your mental health, emotional health, and your body will begin to deplete. I'm not saying to die is a bad thing or a good thing. If that's what you want to do, then go ahead. I'm saying no problem. Shit is what it is. Do what you want to do. If that is not your goal or your intentional goal, then keep in mind what I'm saying and be aware of what is happening as it's happening, because you can become immediately possessed by it if you are not aware or aware to a certain degree, okay, of understanding. You are an appointed force and pointing force. You are an appointed force and a pointing force. For forever moving forward to confirm and validate what you think and feel in order to point at it and say, there it is. So besides the principle of what is behind the veil and words of assumption, accusation, you yourself in your natural state of being is a forward force. And this is a principle once again. You are just a forward force, which is why you so-called age, or while the body goes through a time cycle and begins to deteriorate as you progress throughout your physical human experience. It's a forward force. That's why this body shuts down and that which you truly are gets released from it, which is what they call death. So you are a forward force. So therefore, everything that pops up in your mind or your brain and you begin to focus on it, it itself also acts as you. It seeks to be a forward force. It's a forward, it's like shooting arrows. You're shooting arrows. And once these arrows go, you can't stop these arrows from going the distance. It's going to keep going the distance. Once you shoot it, it's out there. You can't shoot it and grab the arrow and pull it back in. Once you shoot it, it's gone and it's in the air. So be aware of what you shoot in the air. Kind of rhymes. Be aware of what you shoot in the air. Okay? And a little bit more to this line right here. You are an appointed force and pointing forward forever, moving forward to confirm and validate what you think and feel in order to point at it and say, there it is. Once again, that's the unphysical seeking to be witnessed as a physical thing. You point and you say, there it is, I knew I was right. But was it ever really there to begin with? Because remember, you create things with your mind and with your intent. You're a recreator of the creator. And you recreate things to happen. Believe it or not, you can make things literally appear in third dimension from your one-dimensional mind. Because you are a creator. You are the creator and you are a creator. You can create. So was things actually there to begin with, or was it something within your mind that created a circumstance, a situation for it to vibrate into a third dimensional thing? And now you witness it and say, there it is. And these are just, certain things to I don't want to say ponder on, but just keep in mind and keep in heart, you know, of things that go on in your life and in your relationships, most importantly, and those that you keep emotionally and mentally close to you. Okay, but also understand that those you keep close to you, you also have to create a space from them. Okay, closure, true closure is space, and true space is closure, or space is true closure, and closure is true space. Understand these two polarities. As much as you're close to them, better give an equal amount of space from them, or respect that equal amount of space from them. Okay. I already said this before. The mind is one-dimensional, and the body is third-dimensional. So the one dimension is always seeking to develop into the third-dimensional reality. It's something digging that's seeking depth. It's something digging, which is why you dig for things. You may look at his phone, you may look at her phone, you may look at his drawers, you may look at her drawers, her dresser, his medicine cabinet, her medicine cabinet. Look throughout his clothes, look throughout her clothes. You know, go investigating through each other's house, whatever the hell you maniacs want to do. Or you insecure and possessed, emotionally possessed, and mentally influenced individuals want to do. Understand that you're digging for something that may not even be there, but if you keep digging hard enough with a strong desire, a strong need, and a strong want and intent to do so, don't be surprised if it actually does appear. How do you know that what appeared is actually a real thing, or was it something that was created by you? And even if something does appear, it's being able to decipher and have consideration of other things as well. And putting whatever clues and hints that one may have to put together. Does it add up? Does it equal out? Or can it be override by something more valuable which you two actually possess and share together? Is it true? Is it untrue? Are you correct or are you incorrect? Is it possible? Because if it's possible, then it can also be impossible. These are polarities. The best thing to do is just to be honest with each other. You know, be honest with her. You be honest with him as much as possible. And it's a good thing to be honest with each other, because that's a spiritual component. Spirit filters out people who are individuals who are supposed to be around you and individuals who are not supposed to be around you. But it can only do that if you are true to self. If you are true to yourself and honest with yourself first and foremost, and secondary honest with others around you that you keep close to you. Okay? Once again, just certain things to consider, certain things to keep in mind and heart. Kima, K-I-M-A-H. That'll be in the book that's coming out that I have right now, which is why I always say keep in mind and keep in heart, or keep in mind and heart, which is K-I-M-A-H. And that's the reason why I say Kima. So, like I said, it's something digging and seeking depth to give itself a life and reality of its own, just like you. Everything wants to be just like you, or wants to exist just like you and just as you. Because it isn't you, but for some reason it's governed within you and is seeking to become you by any means necessary. So let's go to the next line, next doorway. The next line in our doorway is, we're going to go differently, or different words, or word for word. So we're going to deal with assumption at the moment. You know, where does assumption come from? What is assumption? What is this thing? And then we'll deal with what is accusation. So next line in our doorway is assumption. It is an insecurity within self, or a certain kind of sense, or a little bit of insecurity within yourself. Um, why aren't you right and exact within yourself? Why are you seeking to assume something? Why aren't you just enjoying the experience that you are in? Why is this thought overtaking or overriding your thinking process or your thinking apparatus? Thinking is the freedom out of thought. But thinking can also be an extension and growing of a thought. You can either use it as a key or as a lock. Thinking can be the key to getting out of thought, or thinking can be the lock to locking yourself within thought and extending it. So, which means you're a present being extending something of the past in your present moment, which is why you are or find more difficulty becoming present, because you're stuck in thoughts. Okay. Next line of the doorway is just dealing with assumption. It's a self protecting its false identity. I assume she's doing this. I assume he's doing that. I'm going to assume that. I'm going to assume that. But where's this assumption coming from? Where's this assuming stemming from? From an identity which is trying to keep itself as, I am this good person. I don't deserve this. How could she do this to me? How could he do that? So assumption is something which stems from a self protecting its false identity. It's a protection of an identity, or an identity protection. Something like LifeLock or something like that they have on these commercials and they promote. Protect your identity theft. That is the ego. A protection from identity theft. Well, not identity theft, but to protect the identity. That it has rotating in place and has had rotating in place for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. So, this assuming is coming from a certain character and personality and identity within yourself that is trying to protect itself. And sooner or later it will judge and moralize something which may have never even occurred or happened, or may not even be happening at that moment. Okay? Next line of assumption is, assumption is a created storyline extending from a feeling and thought, seeking a confirmation, validation, and truth for its created storyline, until it becomes the main character within its own created story. Let's say that one more time. Assumption is a created storyline extended from a feeling and thought, seeking a confirmation, validation, and truth for its created storyline, until it becomes the main character within its own created story. I'm assuming he's doing this, I'm assuming she's doing that. It's a story that you created, and a storyline derived from a story which came from the creation of your mind. And as it creates this story, and the storyline extends from the story, it becomes a storyline now. Your false self places itself as a character in that storyline, or that story stream, the stream of story. So it's seeking, and it does that to create a feeling or an emotion from the storyline which it has created. It's seeking to make that as real as possible. Okay, so it wants that thought to become that action, and the action is the emotion or the yelling or the screaming or the threatening, um, shaking, getting mad, angry, furious. It's seeking to become that little victim in its own created storyline. Once again, this is nothing but a pointed force, a forward force just forwarding itself. It's nothing but principle being principle. It's not the person or the personality you're taking it personal. This is not what this path is about. This is not what I share this information or this insight with you. Or, this is not what this channel is about. This is about principle, pure principle. Principle at its purest understanding and observation awareness. Okay. So in other words, like I said, it's creating its own storyline. In other words, it's like being victim-minded. You become victim-minded, and the more you assume, the more you gather this imaginary or make-believe scenarios in your mind, the more you become like this little innocent, small, little victimized sheep that is taking on all this trauma and all this trouble and all this tribulation from someone. When in actuality, that whole drama you just created in your mind may very well just be an illusion of your mind. And if it's an illusion of your mind, and the more you give your thought, and then the more you give your attention to it, the more you increase the possibility to become delusional. So you create a reality which is illusional, and the more you create it, the more you create the potential to become delusional, which means you get lost within the entrappings of the brain, the left and right brain hemisphere, the right and wrong, the good and bad, the pure and evil, rather than just seeing that, oh, pure and evil is there, good and bad is there, right and wrong is there. These are just two sides. And if I have one side that polarizes another side, and this one side polarizes this other side, then my awareness and my intelligence tells me to cancel out both sides. So then I begin at zero again, which is the nothing, which is the emptiness which I truly am. And I stay focused on that. This is if you're on a spiritual path. If you're on this path, this is what this is about. This is what this channel is about. This is what this path is about. Okay? Find the relative, find the relevant if you want to, and associate this with you. If you find it relative and relevant to your path, to your understanding of this reality which we currently are experiencing and exist within. Okay? The next line in the doorway is, during the development and progression along the stream from assuming to accusing, during the development and progression along the stream from assuming to accusing, are the unseen and unknown principles of desire, want, and need. You constantly keep digging until you find something or bump into something. Something that you think or thought was there, but might not be there and may never have been there to begin with. Keep in mind that you possess the power to create. Keep in mind that you possess the power to create, which means to create a dimension and reality to place yourself within. You create within pure space, the space within your mind and present dimension you're dense within. Address your creation and give your creation an address to make it a place to mentally and physically place yourself within. Okay, so like I was saying, during the development and progression along the stream from assuming to accusing are the unseen and unknown principles of desire, want, and need. This is also principles that are also it's also a part of that driving, pointing forward force moving forward. desire, need, and want, um, from the unseen to the seen. It's seeking to be seen because it's unseen. It's seeking to be touched when it becomes felt. When you feel it, that feeling is seeking to become something which can be touched. Which is why you feel like she's doing this or she's doing that, and now you want to touch her. You want to create a violent act. And even the story with her, she feels something that she wants now to touch him and violate his space, invade his space, intrude, or cause harm or hurt to him, both mentally, emotionally, and in some cases, physically. It's just a energy which is an extreme, an energy moving forward, an extreme moving forward, and it doesn't stop until it reaches a point of self-destruction or destruction of another. And then this force that which was keeping you company, as soon as you're by yourself in a jail cell or in a hospital or wherever you may be, and you see that that force that was keeping you company, that looked like it was real at that moment, is no longer there to keep you company anymore. Now you're by yourself in a situation, a circumstance, or predicament which you find of no benefit to you, that doesn't serve you, which is actually more against you than anything, or against your purpose, or your reason, or both in this reality. So it's something that looks like it's there, and it's by your side, but in actuality, when you create that extreme, it'll leave your ass right where you at, by yourself. So that's pretty much it. You create something, you address something, you give it an address, and you make it a place to mentally and physically place yourself within when you are nothing but pure space. You're nothing but pure space, creating a place to place yourself within that place and cross over from your space of nothingness to a place of somethingness. That's assumption and accusation, from assuming to accusing. The crossover that you get lost over. Okay? The next line in the doorway is assumption. Once again, we're still with assumption. To seek an illusional perfection or a created perfect. Keep in mind that perfect, the word perfect, is related to the word effect, like special effects or graphics, which is nothing but fake technology going on. And effect is related to the word defect, which means a throwaway, something that is of no use or usage, is no longer good. So perfect is related to the word effect, and effect is related to the word defect. Why am I saying that once again? Assumption or assuming something is to seek an illusional perfection or a created perfect. It's something which is trying to perfect itself. I assume they're doing this. And you're going to keep going on that assumption until that perfecting thing perfects itself at some point, which means that you may bump into something or find something or find out about something. But understand that what you find out about something may not have even been anything that was actually in creation before you, the mind being, created it to happen. Then it became a situation, a circumstance that you find yourself within. Not saying that what you're assuming and accusing is wrong or right, or you're not correct, or you're correct or incorrect about something. Like, once again, like I said, just be honest with each other as much as possible. You be honest with him, and you be honest with her as much as possible, to eliminate all this shit out the way, to eliminate all of this and just have a clear, precise understanding of and embrace your experience with this individual. Just reside within pure awareness and stay as centered and balanced and light as much as possible for as long as possible. There's nothing wrong or right about feeling and thinking things and having emotion and getting into a little dispute or a little argument or debate or disagreement. There's nothing wrong or right to it. But when it happens or when it occurs, where is your awareness at? It's always about your awareness. And what assists that awareness to be at play are the two principles of control and discipline. This keeps you on that straightforward line of awareness. Okay? So that's why I said it's seeking an illusional perfection or a created perfect, seeking to become perfect. But also keep in mind that perfect is the word effect, which means that it's an effect. It's not the root cause, it's an effect of something. To be perfect is an effect of something, which is a root cause, which stems from a root cause. But if you don't have or keep in mind of the root cause of the effect, then you're lost in the source. And that effect is also related to the word defect, which means that what you're thinking it could be thrown away. What you're assuming can be nothing. It could be of no use to you, but if you keep it in motion, you keep it in play, and you give it your present awareness, you give it life. You give it life as looking to create. You are a creator, and you create a certain kind of reality and situation and circumstance for it to be. And voila, there it is. But keeping in mind that that which is may not have been there to even begin with. So take things for what it is as it's being explained to you. Address what's going on with your mate, whatever is in your mind and what you may be feeling within that moment. And they, if you have that honest bond, that honest connection, they will tell you in that moment and say, well, yeah, that's true. You're right, you got me. Or they say, you know what? No, that's not has nothing to do with me. That's not true. That's has nothing to do with me. And you being an aware individual have to immediately balance yourself out and center yourself in that moment as quickly as possible to get back to a balanced state of being, to get back to a homeostasis way of being within you. To find that harmony within you, to be as light within your body and your mind as much as possible, for as long as possible, whenever possible, which is always possible, as long as you have an awareness, okay? As long as you are involved or remaining aware, pardon me, okay? The next line in our doorway under assumption is to not have enough evidence, then to create an evidence or evidences, and then to gather those created evidences to falsely confirm a created story in your mind. So to not have enough evidence, then to create an evidence, and then to gather that created evidence to falsely confirm a created story in the mind. This is what assuming is. Assuming is like, once again, I said, I was right there. I was right there. I was right correct. I was correct then too, like 5 years ago when I told my cousin this. Oh, I knew I was right because I was proven right. I was proving this and I was right. My family member, my uncle said this, but I corrected him and my mother. And you're gathering all these right stars and right happy faces and you're pinning them to yourself and you're so right. And I knew I was right. I knew I was correct. I knew I wasn't wrong. And you're gathering all this. You're making a whole story in your mind off of this one situation, which is the present moment. You're gathering past things, and the more past things that you gather, the more you become blind to the present moment. Your present moment is supposed to be soaked and drenched within the rivers of your awareness. But you're thinking about all the times that you were right and correct and, got your point across and somebody else told you they were wrong. and you're gathering that as egotistical stripes, and you're not staying within the present moment. This can be a brand new experience for you that can be teaching you something about yourself within yourself and with this other individual. But if you're not treating it accordingly or moving accordingly, you may actually lose grasp and hold of this reward or treasure which has fallen into the palm of your hand and your lap. So it's all about how you're perceiving what's going on within that moment, basically, ultimately. Okay. So once again, under assumption is like assumption. The next line in doorway, last line in doorway under assumption is to create a path or a pathology and a false trail or trailing within that path or pathology to confirm that something is traveling on that path. Once again, this is all created. You're creating a creation on top of 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 a creation. And you're creating this temple or the structure of nothing but creatings and creations that you have created. Once again, just to confirm and validate that what you think is real is real. But it doesn't mean that what you think is real was ever real to begin with. You have to keep these polarities in mind. You have to keep in mind that one polarizes the other and one side polarizes the other possibility. They both validate each other. Wrong and right both validate each other. Your awareness should take wrong and right and cancel them out, both of them, to come back to the point of zero, which is your emptiness. You're supposed to zero out or find the release all the time to zero out during whatever situation that happens or plays out in your human experience. Okay? I want to go over the definitions of what assumption is and what accusation is according to the dictionary. The definition of assumption is a thing that is accepted as true or as certain to happen without proof. So let's say that one more time. The definition of assumption is a thing that is accepted as true or as certain to happen, but without proof. Which means ultimately that it is an unsure thing. You have to keep this in mind when you're assuming things, that assuming means unsurety. Assuming does not mean fact, proof, truth, and sure. It means unsurety. This is what it means. And I'm not basing this entirely on a dictionary definition. This is what that energy is about, period. Also understand that assumption is connected to the word assault, which is why when you assume, you get into a boiled state, and then you feel that you may want to assault her or assault him physically. Assume, assault. These words are connected for a reason. They relate. You also have the word assuage, if I'm pronouncing correctly, Assuage, and that means an unpleasant feeling to make less intense. An unpleasant feeling, period, to make less intense. So you're becoming less intense. You're becoming a less intense life form. An unpleasant feeling. You are becoming an unpleasant feeling and you are losing your life force. You are making it less intense. These are words and definitions that are connected to the word assumption. And then you have words like assured. You're trying to assure something. If you're trying to assure something, it means that primarily it's not a sure thing. And then you have the last word, which is assumpsit. Assumpsit, Assumpsit, and that means unjust enrichment. Unjust means there is no justice. There is no balance. There is no ma'at to what you are assuming. It's imbalanced, which is why you become imbalanced, which is why you become disaligned, which is why you start to develop an ailment and a sickness and an illness or a unease, unease within your system. It is unjust. It is not justified. There is no justice. There is no balance in what you are assuming. It is unjust enrichment. It is trying to enrich its unjustliness. And you can only enrich its unjustliness if you are ignorant to it and if you give it your attention. It's seeking your attention. Why do you think this thought and this mental dialogue keeps playing over and over and over and over and over and over in your mind and keeps cycling and recycling and cycling and recycling? It keeps going on and on in your mind because it's trying to get your attention and keep your attention, to keep your attention on it so that it may grow from its one-dimensional existence into your third-dimensional experience. But it needs you to give it that life, which is your attention. Once again, metaphysics, we learn that attention is life. Your attention gives things life. Okay? So you give the heartbeat and the spirit in things that didn't have a heartbeat or spirit to begin with. That's also what it's saying. Okay, the last thing is accusation. We went, of course, assumption in different ways of understanding. Now we're going to get into accusation. It's only about 3 or 4 lines. So let's get into it. Where does accusation come from? What is accusation? The line doorway is from satisfying the ego enough times in your life to the point of self-satisfaction. In other words, from you thinking you're right or always right or being right or always correct in certain circumstances in your life with different people in certain situations and things of that nature. So when you accuse somebody of something, you're satisfying the ego, and it's a certain kind of egoistic satisfaction, and it's from you saying, I know I'm right, I'm always right, I'm always right, I'm always right, I'm always right. So when something happens, you're gonna always think that you're always right. And being right or the need to be right is a classic indication of egotistical behavior. I need to be right. I need to be. I need to be right. I need to be correct. This has to be true. This has to be the truth. This has to be a fact. But when the other side comes up and says, if you don't, it says if you, well, where's the proof? Where's the evidence? Where's the connection from that to that? Or from him to her, or from her to him? What is the meeting point? The meeting point, the middle point that connects that to this or connects that to this, because right now they're in 2 locations, 2 different spaces. What is the middle or the median or the meeting point, which you see that meeting point is the explosion? That's what it is. What is that meeting point, that middle point, that median point that makes that both corners of what you think is tied together, which make that third point to create that explosion of truth? Where is it? What is the proof? Where's the evidence? Where's Exhibit A, Exhibit B, and Exhibit C to connect that to this or that or this to that? And if that's absent or not there, you have to be honest within yourself that it's just not connecting. No matter how many stories I may create, no matter how many times I was right and exact and correct in my past with him or her or them or that, at this present moment, I don't have the evidence or the proof to connect both of these things into one scenario. It's just not meeting, and understand why it's not meeting. because it may not even be a joining or a connection to begin with. But you have to be honest with yourself. That's all. This is all your own homework. This is all your own mind work, your own heart work. This has nothing to do with the other that you're with. This is your own internal work to do within yourself, as yourself, by yourself, for yourself. If you are on this path and take this path serious enough, it's all up to you. No, it's all up to you. The next line of the doorway is, to accuse is to try to pinpoint a kind of accuracy of some sort, to be determined towards being accurate. Once again, accuse, accusation is also related to the word accurate or accuracy. Which is why when you accuse, you get your point across. When you do bow and arrow, or people do bow and arrow, and they're doing bow and arrows, and they're shooting at a target, they're trying to make that bow and arrow point accurate to hit that target. They're trying to be as accurate as possible when they shoot that bow and arrow and let it go into the target. So when you accuse, you're trying to get your point across. You're shooting your bow and arrows to hit a certain target, but understand that that target may not even be there. You may not even be hitting anything but air. But you think that there's a target there. This illusional creation has made you become potentially delusional. You think there's a target there, but you're shooting bow and arrows and there's no target to hit. So what are you being accurate for? Where is the accuracy? Where is the target that you're trying to hit if there's no target there? And if there's no target there and you realize it, why keep shooting more arrows? Why hold the bow and arrow? Why not just drop it and let it go? Because the identity is trying to protect itself. And you not being aware, you fall into the realm or dimension of ego. EGO. And once you fall deeper and sink yourself and anchor yourself deeper and deeper and deeper into that, don't think that it's going to easily just let you go. The more deeper you put yourself into it, the more homework and mind work and heart work you create for yourself. And the more difficult or challenging it may become to get the hell back up out of it. The more you give it time and attention, time and attention, attention and time, time and attention, attention and time, time and attention, and time and attention. Throughout this time and attention and time that you're giving this thought, you're focusing and becoming concentrated on it. So you have time, attention, focus, and concentration. Attention and time, concentration, and focus. You're giving it more life, more body, more life. You're giving it more presence than the actual presence or present moment which you derive from, which you are and always have been and always will be. You're giving it more presence than you're giving yourself, your own presence. Okay? The next line in the doorway under accusation is something within self seeking a false surety and false security. Something within self seeking a false surety and false security. Once again, being secure, security, trying to secure the identity which it thinks it is, which you think you are. Something within self seeking a false surety and false security. A false surety and a false security. It's just something trying to secure itself once again. It's trying to protect itself when, like I said before, with the identity and the personality. It's so comfortable. You gave it so much years and so much time and so much thought and so much mind. It actually becomes a living entity, a living entity. It becomes something that's the actual living thing inside of you, and it's not gonna give up or give in easily. because you gave it so much time, attention, focus, and concentration. You're giving it and gave it more life than you give and gave to yourself. Something to keep in mind and keep in heart as you're moving along this path, okay? The next line, the last line in our doorway is under accusation. Understanding of accusation is to accumulate, to constantly accumulate repetitious thought cycles. Accuse or accusation is also related to the word accumulate, which is what we know as accumulate or accumulation. Accusation is also accumulation. So this is why you accumulate more and more thoughts, and why you're right, and why you're justified, and you're correct, and you think this is going on, and you think that's right. But all this, you can feel that you're so right and you're so correct and so exact, and you're accusing, or whoever you're accusing, or what you accuse, or your accusations that you're throwing out at someone. But this can happen. All this can happen. Keep in mind that all this can happen without any real proof or evidence, or any real median or middle point of connection that connects this to that or that to this. You can just be shooting your mouth off. You can just be directing your anger, your animosity towards someone that you're emotionally and mentally connected to, and be accusing them all the way, and may not even ever have any kind of evidence or proof behind to stabilize and structure your accusation to be an actual truth. How am I able to see what I'm talking about? How am I able to talk this with you and explain this to you? Because I've felt and been through these dimensions and realms. And dimensions is nothing but a depth. That is what a dimension is. It is a certain kind of depth. Assumption is a certain kind of depth that can be a possible, can become a possible reality. Accusation is a certain kind of depth that you anchor yourself within, that can become a possible reality around you, that you surround yourself within. So I've felt these ways, and I've thought these ways, and I've experienced these kind of experiences, which I had to remain still and silent, and just feel the depth of the feeling, and feel the depth of the thought cycling itself deeper and deeper, or trying to cycle itself deeper and deeper within me, and the feeling trying to anchor itself deeper and deeper within me. I was able to detect the depth of the feeling, and able to detect the cyclic, or realize the cyclic nature of thought. And once I was able to determine these two things, I started to suspend these two things, or eject from these two things, and see them from across the room, or see them in front of me or beside me, rather than being possessed by it, influenced by it, and becoming in these two things. And then I am thought now, and this thought seeks to become action, and now I am a victim, or me, the master, becomes a slave to the slave itself, because your mind and your body is the slave of you. You are the master. The master is the life force. But situations and circumstances, present day situations and circumstances, and individuals, present day individuals, or modern day individuals, have become the slave to the slave itself, have become a slave to their brain and their body, rather than being or remaining the master and the commander to the brain and body. The brain and body has become the master and commander of the life force itself. See, so the past has taken over the present in most cases, for those individuals who are not aware to a certain degree, and can hold that value in whatever situation that they find themselves in, or place themselves in, and whatever circumstance may arise from a certain situation unfolding. Pardon me. Last thing, accusation. Let's look at the word dictionary definition of the word accusation. The dictionary definition of the word accusation is a charge or that someone has done something illegal or mentally wrong, or morally wrong, pardon me. Accusation is a charge or that someone has done something illegal or morally wrong. Morals, once again, it deals with humanity. Is something of more of a human nature. It's not really of a spiritual nature. Spirit, of course, is principle. Human is more of personal personality. We have certain things, certain standards that keep certain things in place and things of that nature, and I get it. But where is your understanding of this reality which you currently exist in? The word accusation also is related to the word accustomed, which is a certain kind of custom. You're accustomed to something that is regular or normal to you. And that's also a kind of look at as traditional. These are mental codes or codings that you have to, or entrappings, brain entrapments that you have to break free from and break out of. Say, accusation is also related to the word accursed, which is ACCURSED, which means to express strong dislike or anger towards someone or something. So even the very nature of accusation or accusing means to express strong dislike or anger towards someone or something. So when this is going on, this energy takes a form. Where, once again, is your awareness? When all this takes form, or this tries to take form, or potentially seeks to become form, where is your awareness throughout this whole process, throughout this whole development and growth? Where is your awareness in between development and growth? Development and growth. Development is trying to seek and to become a growing thing. So as it's developing, the only thing that can stop this development from turning into a growth is your awareness, which blocks it. If your awareness blocks the development, then the development recedes back to where it protruded from, and it can't become a growing thing. It never grows, just becomes dead meat, and nothing is there because your awareness is there. Your awareness is always the blocker. It always blocks things from going this way, or blocks things from going this way, from making that crossover. Nothing can make a crossover from one side to the other, or one side to the other, if your awareness is always there to block that from happening, or to neutralize it. So to neutralize yourself as well, to remain humble within yourself. And that's pretty much it. The word accue, ACCU, is also some way of understanding is a battery that can be restored to full charge by the application of electrical energy. Which also means as well that you are an electrical force. You have electricity running through your plasma, your liquid, your veins, this physical body, the brain, especially through the synapses and neurons. So electricity stems out, it seeks out. So accusing, accusation, accursed, these are all electrical streamings that are seeking to spread out. So keep this in mind when you become or you will start accusing or accuse someone of something, and you fall into the dimension of accusation. Keep in mind there's actually something trying to reach out and stem out, and your awareness can actually pull that back in and draw that back into the point from which it protruded from, if your awareness is there. Because this is what this path is about. Pure awareness. Am I as I am, as you are. I will see you guys next time. Until then, I'll keep it on vision. 1, 0.